Welcome to the Latched On Podcast. The Latched On Podcast is about the outdoors in Appalachia. Everything from hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, bushcraft, and woodsmanship, and digging into the depths of what makes this area of Appalachia so unique as a whole. It's time to strap in for the Latched On Podcast. Alright guys, welcome to another episode of the Latched On Podcast. This is probably our first episode that we're recording in the year of 2024. And me and Zac are here, and we're going to talk about kind of like a recap of 2023 and like how our kids got dialed in, and how, I mean, if you listen to our podcast from last year, you know that we were real big on getting our kids, and I think it was a couple episodes back we did that video podcast of where we actually went over our equipment, and it did change a lot.
Yeah, which we predicted it would.
Which we knew it would. But Zac, what did you figure out with your gear and how you changed it, and what you're going to go into this year, technically, with it?
So I did dial a lot of mine in. I knew I would, and I thought I had it pretty close, but I probably wasn't even true, because I dialed it in even more. Less and less stuff. I just started bringing less and less things. I don't think you need as much as you think you do. You don't have to have a big pack full of stuff. I'm trying to think what all I did get rid of. I can't remember. I should have watched that episode so I could see what I did have and when I ended.
It was that Lone Wolf, like fanny pack, big fanny pack.
So I used their. I think
you still use that.
I used that the whole season. I did enjoy it. I liked how I could wear it on my waist going in. I had my rangefinder and everything on it. And then once I got in, I would clip it to my seat. I still use the .5 the majority of the season. I did kill 2 deer. This past season, I killed a doe at deer camp, and then a couple weeks later, killed a 5-point, real wide 5-point. I used my first bow buck, so it was hard not to pass up that opportunity. But I killed him out of the .5, so I killed one out of both. The .5, it's one of those stands you can either love it or hate it. Some people don't like it because it is small. The first sit or two, I was a little stiff in it because it is kind of small, even though I'm a shorter guy. Yeah. After I got in like kind of hunting shape, and after I was ready, the .5, I actually preferred it just because it was smaller. If it was an all-day sit at deer camp, the 7.5 was pretty sweet.
I'm about to say the 7.5 would probably be better for an all-day sit, but if you're going out for like just a morning or an afternoon for like maybe 2 or 3 hours.
Or if you move a lot, because that's kind of the idea with it too, is because you get down, you stretch your legs, walk into a new spot.
And I was one thing I noticed is when we did, when we saddle hunted the year before last, before we really got in the tree stand, I guess where I was new to saddle hunting, it seemed like such a chore to go up, go down, go up, go down if you had to reposition.
Yeah.
But like I guess where I had that experience and where I used the Novix that you sold me, it seemed like to me like it was so much easier to get up in a tree, set up the tree stand, and you're good to go. And the way we used it, well, at least I used it, you kind of did the same thing. Yeah, you used your saddle. Where we got that saddle set up and we used that lineman's rope. And then, I kind of did they don't safely recommend that you use one rope for a lineman and a tether. Yeah. But I've seen you did it, and then I got more comfortable doing it too. Yeah. Confident. When the Skeletor sticks were like miles ahead of the sticks I used last year, the year before last. And it felt like, and when I was up in that stand with the lineman's rope, I got such a bigger platform, so I felt safer being up on that, so I was able to like take it off.
And you're only in for a couple seconds.
And it's like 4 seconds that I'm not using it.
Yeah, I maintained that. I actually did change some stuff because I had the set of Latitude sticks, and I also had a set of double Lone Wolf sticks. I liked both. There's pros and cons to both. The Latitudes are quieter, and just because they're not tuning forks. The other ones are louder. The other ones, the Lone Wolf ones, pack smaller. So on the .5, if I tried to go, because I run 2 sticks the majority of the season, towards the end of the season I did go up to 3, and that was only because I kept losing cover because all the leaves had fell and stuff, and the deer are more skittish, so I did have to go up a little higher. And when the 3 of those are stacked together, when I was strapping stuff to my seat, it would push it out, and then it was the meat shelf feature they have on the Lone Wolves. It was disengaging because it was pushing it away from the stand. So I did have run into an issue there. So I went back to the Lone Wolf ones, and then I just kind of adjusted.
I had a similar issue to that with my Skeletor sticks. I was doing the same thing you were doing. We were tying it around and using one of those straps to tie it to like the center frame of the stands.
Yep.
So I did it with my skeleton sticks. Thought it was going to be good, and then it turns out it was real loose when I started walking. And I used like 2 extra gear straps to tie it down, and I'm like, this is not at all how it should be. Like it wasn't how it was supposed to go. You know, when you go into the field, it changes completely of like what you think it's going to go.
Exactly. Even though we practiced it.
Yeah. And then I went hunting, and then I just started thinking, for some reason, it was like out of the blue, I just packed it opposite.
Yeah.
Like the grippers or the standoffs were pointed outwards when I was packing it out all season. And then just for some reason, I put the grippers on the inside.
Yeah.
And it locked into place.
Yeah.
No movement at all.
Yeah.
Because it had those little holes on the tree stand to like fit inside of. So then I just used the one strap after that, and it was so much easier.
Yeah, it's just you got to swap it and just
just a simple thing like that.
Yeah.
Pretty much fixed a lot of fixed me a lot of issues for me, like just worrying about it, moving around and all that stuff. And then I switched from that little backpack. I think in the video I was going to use a dry bag, but I switched completely from that. I bought one of them water packets that goes on like a military style plate carrier for a Camelback. And then I used that for a couple weeks or first part of the season. It worked good, but it was a little bit of a pain in the ass to take off and put back on because the book bag straps just tightening them up to make sure they secured. So then I found like just a multicam fanny pack.
Yep.
And I was able to fit everything in that because we were talking about we were taking less and less every time we went in.
Yep.
And perfect because I can carry it on the stand, and then I can carry it on me when I'm climbing.
Yep.
And I got one of the pockets literally has my cam strap.
Yep.
In a pocket. I can grab it. Everything I need is right there that I potentially would need.
That's why I preferred the fanny pack of some sort.
Because it's really a lot more accessible. And I used to make fun of people I saw all the time on vacation walking around with fanny packs. And I guess now that I'm older and a dad, I'm kind of like, okay, they made sense.
Oh, I rock my fanny pack. I rock one on vacation
so
too.
I'm like, guess who's going to rock a fanny pack every time on vacation now?
Yeah.
So
by the end of the season, I hadn't used my saddle one time. So I used it as a lineman's, as like a harness. I used it as a harness. I had the TX5 Minimalist. I never deployed the saddle one time. So literally it was like the last week of the season. I don't even think I actually took it out because I did acquiring a muzzleloader just to use for late season. I still prefer archery hunting and still prefer archery hunting during early muzzleloading in Virginia. But for late season, like the end of it, I did actually get just a plain old CVA stainless wolf with iron. I'm just rocking the iron sights on it. I did enjoy just scouting because I used it more of a scouting tool. And if I did come across a larger buck, I had the opportunity to take a shot. If I was still trying to get meat, I still probably would have took the bow just solely because I could have shot a doe, but I didn't need it at that time. So I was like, well, I'm just kind of hunting for bigger bucks and scouting. So I got a backpack, like an actual day almost one-nighter backpack, loaded down with cameras and went and just scouted hunting and just bounced and was dropping cameras pretty much every hunt.
And that's something that we talked about. We did a lot of summer scouting last year. Not saying we didn't learn a lot, but from what I've determined is when we're hunting deer, we're hunting them in the season
on their winter patterns.
On their winter patterns, not their summer patterns. Now we can get a good idea where their bedding's at in the summer. We know that there's deer in the area and all that stuff. But we were talking about maybe especially after the rut, they're going to be focusing more on food and coverage and all that stuff. Same thing they're going to be doing pre-rut.
Yep.
So we figured during late muzzleloader season or late archery season, set up our trail cameras then and run them until
I started
March.
So I pulled all the ones that were just I pulled a lot of them that were just getting simple data, just getting does and small bucks, and wanted to put them deep into places to try to capture large bucks and the quantity of bucks that made it through the season. And I did that pretty successfully. I got a lot of bucks on camera. Some of them are just bruisers, and then a bunch of just good grade 8 points, and then a bunch of smaller bucks that are going to be bigger next year. So, and everything in theory should be a little bit larger next year than what all the camera pictures. So everything looks very promising. And that was good. Actually, by the end of the season though, where I quit, I didn't deploy the saddle once. I traded it for the Dryad deer harness I didn't get the saddle, the hammock thing. I didn't need that. I just wanted the harness because it was even less things to carry.
Yeah.
And I think I only got to use it once, if I'm not mistaken, because there's only once I went out in a stand. The other times I was just still hunting with a muzzleloader. It worked flawlessly. It's if you just want a harness, I highly recommend it so far, and I do not see me changing from that. And I also traded the Lone Wolf double steps for a set of their single steps. The reason I
know
did
you
that,
talked about doing that.
so I ended up getting a set of, I got 4 Lone Wolf 14-inch single steps, and I'm probably still not going to run more than 3, and 3's in the late season. Early season, I'm still just probably going to run 2 with a cable aider on both. So just 1 step aider on both of them. Those you can't run the doubles like we normally do, the M-Steel ones. You have to run like a cable style, which is, it don't bother me, and I like that. I don't mind the cable. So I'm excited to use those because I didn't get to actually use those, but packing them to the stand is phenomenal. That's really? I mean, if you don't mind a single step, which I don't, because I'm like, I mean, you know how I am. I climb a tree like a squirrel. It don't bother me. You know, heights don't bother me, and climbing don't bother me. So the way that they pack to the actual platform, and there's no room taken away from my seat, because the .5 has a small seat, and I use the 2 little, I think they're accessory gear straps is what they call them on Lone Wolf's website. They're like $5 for 2 of them, or $10 for 2 of them, something like that. They're not expensive. It's a mini cam buckle is all it is. It's a mini cam strap, so it's not so big and clunky. And it girth hitch loops to the front and the back of your seat. And then what I do with all my clothes that I carry, because I still carry no bag other than that small fanny pack, I'd roll my clothes up, and like a bed roll, I'd just lay my biggest garment down and then fold all my other stuff in it, and and roll it up, slide it on my seat, and then use those 2 straps to bundle it down like a cowboy roll, really. And when I get there, some days I actually got to where I could, because I didn't carry that much clothes, I could climb and hang my stand with my clothes still strapped to my seat. And then, because a lot of times I'm burning up by the time I get there because I walk so far, and then I climb the tree. I could take my clothes and put them between the cables behind my legs, and then once I started cooling off or needed to put them on, I could put them on in the stand, depending on what it was.
I know there's one thing that you and Sword, I noticed at deer camp, it was the Cabela's fleece.
They're like Berber. They're kind of like Berber fleece, but they got a little bit of wool on them.
They're windproof though. That's the big thing.
They got a wind shear. Yeah, they got that wind shear, windproof layer on the inside, and the outside is like fuzzy. It looks like wool, but like I said, it's more of a Berber fleece. That was their Berber fleece. I don't recommend, if you're going to buy a wool garment, from my research, don't buy the Cabela's brand wool garment. The reason being is because it's only like 7 or 10% wool, and they just advertise it as a wool garment because it has some wool in it. I've actually seen some pretty high-end guys talk about, if you want something, get the LL Bean wool pants, outer layers, and because they have some, and they're like much more higher percentage of wool. But also, I've looked at the Code of Silence stuff, which is it's a wool fleece blend. And Code of Silence is very affordable too. So.
I've actually looked at their website when we talked about it, and a lot of their stuff is really affordable. The reason why I was talking about the Cabela's thing is, though, I remember we were at deer camp. We actually hunted pretty close to the same saddle. You were warm as snug as a bug, and I was freezing my nuts off. And it wasn't even that cold. I don't know. I think it was maybe like 35 that
Some
morning.
mornings you get a chill, though, and you can't get it.
I had that chill from when I was sleeping because I brought the wrong sleeping bag to deer camp. That's another story entirely. But I thought I had a good sleeping bag. I didn't pay attention to what sleeping bag I grabbed for deer camp, and it was not the sleeping bag I needed because I froze my nuts off all night, and then I just could not warm up the whole day. And I had a puffy jacket and everything. My upper body was warm. My bottom layer, I was
they're big and bulky, and they're not very lightweight. But they're very affordable though, because
especially in late season,
only like $70 or $80.
They're not. I got it for $70 at Bass Pro down in.
Did you buy some too?
Sevierville. Yeah, I bought some. Like literally, I think we took the kids down there. It was the week after deer camp because my daughter's birthday was that week, and we took her down there to see the aquarium. And I was like, let's stop Bass Pro and see if they got any of these
they're
Sherpa Berber pants
sweet.
or whatever. So that was a real, and then I wore them one time during late muzzleloader season. I went up to my shack, and they were just really warm until the shack got warmed up. Because I'm not gonna lie, I use a little buddy heater in there because it's cold.
If you can, you can.
If you can, you can. And I just go up there because that's the only. That's a whole other story about how my deer season went. But pretty much the gist of my deer hunting win is. Zac knows it straight up. It started off great, And then October hit, and I had a lot of family issues come up, and I just did not have a lot of chances to get out in the woods. Even on deer camp, we had to cut it. We had to cut it early by what? We only got like 3 days because Swords had a family emergency, and then I had a family issue that happened, and we just had to cut it in. But that's just one of those things. Family takes priority.
It is, and that's you
we love hunting. We love hunting.
Yeah, you can pride yourself on that though. We all stepped down and where we needed to. Yeah. There was a big portion in December I didn't hunt at all because I was fortunate enough to where I did get to hunt so much during October, November. So December I took the majority of the month off solely to make sure the family life was dealt with in a good way and mended and everything. So it happens, and that's not a big deal. When we talk about stuff we learned too, a big priority of mine was going to try to do what Jake Bush did in like the hub scrapes. And I started looking in and researching, and obviously I started hunting, and I tried that style of hunting. It did not work out, and then I started listening to people that's hunted more in our area, like Nathan Killen, which if you don't know Nathan Killen, you need to, especially if you're in the Virginia area. He's only a few counties from us, and he is a Cold Stone big buck killer with a trad.
He has that podcast that you recommended me to. Was it?
He doesn't have a podcast, but he's been a guest on many.
That's the other. Okay.
He's been on Latitudes. He's been on Bo Martonic's. What's his? I can't remember what his is called. East Meets West.
East Meets West. Yeah.
And he's been on a bunch of others. If you just get on whatever you watch podcasts on or listen to, and look up Nathan Killen. And his last name is very fitting because he uses a trad bow on 90%. He killed
E-N or I-N? K-I-L-L-E-N?
I think it's I-N. Either one you'll find it. But he also has this year, his big thing is traditional hunting with a stick and string bow. But he still hunts any legal method. So if it's muzzleloader season, sometimes he takes muzzleloader. If it's rifle, he does take a rifle. And he killed I think it's his biggest buck to date, in Virginia anyway. This year was like 172 inches with a rifle on an open-a-day rifle. It's just, and that's in our area. It's only it's like 4 or 5 counties away. So they're here. It's just, but like I said, I listened to him, and he had talked about the Ohio method, which is what Jake Bush primarily talks about, and this hub scrapes, and it works up there. He said down here in Virginia in the mountains, and this dude's been hunting longer than I've been alive, so I trust his opinion.
Ohio is more rolling hills like eastern Kentucky. Yeah. It's shorter plateauy, hilly stuff, but like once you cross over the state line in Virginia, if you know anything about this area, once you pass Pound Gap or Cumberland Gap coming into Virginia from Kentucky, the mountains are completely different. And I've been saying that for years. I know some people are like, deer are the same as everywhere else. I'm like,
they do different things.
They do the same thing. They look for food, they look for shelter, they look for tail.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. All deer do the same thing. But they move different in the mountains.
Yeah, they do. They do. And that's something. So my tactic I went from worried about scrapes to where I did hunt scrapes, but I didn't hunt them as in thinking it was the hub scrape and he's going to wake up out of bed, like the typical thing.
I think what we did, what we took from our hub scrape mentality last year is we knew if we found a hub scrape, we knew where the deer were centralizing. That doesn't necessarily mean we were going to find the deer, because we found a hub scrape that I hunted a lot on National Forest, and that had a big old buck show up on that trail camera. He was nocturnal up until like 2 days. He showed up during the day, and he showed up on the last day or the day after ending day of season.
Yeah.
And he frequented that hub scrape multiple times. A couple other bucks did too.
Yeah.
But it was more like on a tram road.
Yeah.
And I set up near that tram road, and I was just waiting for him to cruise out of that hub scrape.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I did a little bit more scouting on another rifle day. Found a bunch more scrapes. I don't know if they were hub scrapes or not. But that one scrape, we found it in turkey season, and it was just regularly used.
Yeah, it was a good community scrape. It was used all the time.
Scrape, yeah.
And that's what I started hunting, the outskirts and around and the travel routes, and that's kind of that's where my success come from. The 5 point I killed, I was hunting a larger buck that I had multiple pictures of. I had one. I don't know if I'd had an encounter with him specifically, but I'd had an encounter with a couple other large bucks that they all used that same system, and it was surprising how non-territorial he kind of was, because a lot of smaller bucks, and then just, your average 8s, your average 8-pointer, not degrading them in any kind of way, but a lot of them all use that same system, and I had encounters with them. There was also a bear and a coyote that was tormenting me in there. Every time I was in there, they were stirring stuff up. And then there was no scrapes through there, but there was a lot of rubs, like giant rubs, like as big as my freaking calf, and through a thicket area. And I hunted the thicket once or twice, and then my encounters, the bucks were above me. So then the next time I went in, and here's the thing about thermals, I went in with the wrong wind and hunted above that thicket. My wind was supposed to be blowing straight into the thicket, but I knew the deer weren't moving in the mornings until after about 9 to 10. Well, I waited until, because it was the thicket's good for the deer majority part because it's south. You have to come in from the south, and you kind of have to hunt it from the south unless you do a giant loop, like a 4-mile loop. Well, I waited until it was like it was a 1 to 3 mile per hour wind day, and it was supposed to be sunny and bluebird skies. And I went in that day and hunted right above the thicket, with my wind technically blowing straight into the thicket. Well, they wasn't sleeping in the thicket or eating in it. They were cruising through it or above it, around that thicket. That was their travel route.
Right.
Well, 9 o'clock, I literally felt warm air hit me in the face, and I dropped my cotton ball, and it would go down about 4 or 5 foot down towards the thicket, and it would literally suck right back up the hill because the thermals were rising.
Rising up
so I was really impressed that day that I kind of broke the code of thermals and winds. Yeah. Now, if I went there on a 10-mile wind per day, it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't have worked.
Or a cloudy day, it probably wouldn't have worked either. But it worked out really, really well that day. I had an encounter that day. The buck I was chasing was about 65 yards. I do carry, when the rut kind of kicks in, I do carry a grunt call and a can call. He looked over his shoulder and wanted nothing of it and kept on walking over the ridge. He heard it and he looked at it.
That's kind of like that thing we talked about last year. Like, bucks are like people; they're different.
Yeah.
And I've come to this impression. I'm not saying that it happens all the time. I'm sure a big buck can be a bully buck and push other bucks out and all that stuff. But like you were talking about, it seems like you got all these bucks in this area. They're not bothering each other.
Yeah.
They're probably, first of all, they're probably all kin. They're probably either
same genetics.
So they probably have they're probably all herd up together in the summer, and they don't care for shit. I'm not saying that they don't push other bucks out when there's a hot doe or something like that. But I've always, majority of the time, if you're looking for an old buck, those are the bucks that are not very aggressive to other bucks.
Oh, yeah,
they're smart.
That, and then the does usually go to them too, because the doe wants to be naturally.
The doe knows to go toward an alpha buck, or at least that's just the best buck.
It's just humans and animals, everything.
And a lot of times the guy, and I've always said this about like just people in general. Usually the guy who's pissing vinegar, is usually just all talk.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what. And he didn't care because I grunted at him, and then I ended up snort wheezing but their rut had already happened. But I was hoping maybe it'd, ensue a little bit of fight in him. He didn't want it. Then I hit a can call and then snort wheezed again. Trying to ensue like maybe a doe had come in late because their rut had already kind of happened in that area, according to trail camera data. And all my cams are SD cams. I talked about that before. I went back to nothing but SD cams. So the only time I don't check them every week either. The only time I check them regularly is if I hunt that spot, because I've already kind of put my scent there anyway, so it doesn't hurt to go ahead and check it. But there's cameras I didn't check for months at a time either, because I just didn't go back to that spot, so I just let it soak. I didn't get too excited and go in.
That's kind of how my cams were. I either went in when I was hunting that area and checked them, or just let them soak.
Because a lot of people want to go in to try to get that intel. And
there's one of those things, like you either stay out of there and don't blow up a spot, or you keep going constantly in there, and then the deer just get used to your scent.
I started hammering that spot really hard.
It's kind of one of those things, because like on my property, I have that camera up there all year round. I don't have a card in it most of the time, but I'm driving up there at least once a week just to drive up there to have fun, and just, because it's my property anyway, and I just have fun up there.
Yeah.
And I could be like, from me to you to a deer, which if you don't know, we're like literally 5 feet away from each other, and they don't care because they're used to me. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not saying that happens all the time. There's two methods: either stay out and don't spook them, but at the same time, if you go in there enough, they ain't gonna care about you anyway.
Yeah, that's what that was probably my 6th or 7th sit within 100-yard radius, and because I'd peppered I'd mobile gamed, and so I don't think I sat in the same tree twice last year, or last season, and I was probably my 6th or 7th sit, but he went over the hill. I knew other deer in the area. I could hear them. And then I seen some legs in the rear end, and I was like, that's too big to be a doe. That's another buck. And I knew it wasn't him because I didn't see him come back over the hill. And he was in the thicket, and then I got a glimpse of his horns. I was like, well, he's a pretty young buck, and I'm pretty deep. But he's really wide. He's past the ears. And I was like, well, I haven't killed a buck with my bow yet. So I was like, I won't call to him. If fate gives him to me, then I'll take a good clean shot on it.
Yeah.
Well, about 4 minutes later, he was standing broadside at 20. So I shot him.
Yeah.
He ran 30 and fell over, and the iron wheels did phenomenal.
Yeah.
And luckily, Andrew come and helped kill himself.
He's like, hey, help me drag this deer out. I'm like, yeah, sure. How far back is it? Oh, it's not that far back.
It's 2.5 miles.
Just 2.5 miles. And I think we were both beat. Don't get me wrong. There's a picture on Facebook, on Instagram. I posted it. And it's literally the post that says, deer hunting is hard. And it's Zach about like dead.
Yeah.
Because we did use the cart, but we found out also that the cart can be modified for the future to make deer, because we use tram roads most of the time.
Yeah.
Getting it out onto the tram road was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because we were going through hills.
I was like two or three ridges deep off the roads.
Off the road.
And
once we got to the tram road, it was better.
By the time we were so beat, we were.
Oh yeah, we were already dead by the time we got to the
And
tram
also, my fault too. I quit training as soon as hunting season went in. I'd quit training.
I do that a lot
like
too.
working out, and I'm not going to do that this year. And I'm going to train harder leading up to season. I'm on a new program, and I'm killing it right now. Not bragging on myself, but like I'm doing good and killing it as in staying steady. I'm not saying I'm a beast. I'm not, but I'm killing it as in my consistency, and I'm doing really well with it. And I've already seen major improvements. So, like I'm probably already a little bit fitter now than I went into season last season, and it's only been 2 months out of since I've done this training. So if I can stay consistent, I should be doing a whole lot better. But that's the main things that I took away, and just keep dialing in the kit. My stuff is spot on dialed now. I take little to nothing. Early season, I usually don't even have to take extra clothes, maybe one extra small jacket strapped to the stand.
And that's just in case if it's windy or raining.
And I put a lot of miles in.
We'll talk a little bit more about the clothing we took, because most of our base layers and mid layers are first light. Me and you both.
Yeah.
And we use a little bit for outer layers. We'll talk more about that in a completely different episode about clothing and materials. But let's just say we got a lot of good things to say about First Light. We've got a few things that they can improve on, at least for us. Yeah. I'm sure, because First Light kind of tethers himself for the west, out west anyway. So it's a little bit different out here in the east because we got a lot more humid.
And we're not brand. And the good thing about listening to us is we're not brand specific. We're not sponsored by anybody, so we can say whatever we want. Because I paid for everything I own, and so did you.
Exactly, I paid for everything. and that's one of those things. Like I bought First Light just because they're comfortable. They're breathable, especially the wick shirts.
I went with the merino wool. Like I wanted merino wool, and First Light was the most
affordable
at the time.
I think they still pretty much are compared to like some other brands.
And the merino wool is what I needed because. Even though we're not out west, I needed that because, one, I traveled. The closest I ever hunted to the house was, or to any, I say the house because I hunt from my house, or access points was half a mile. And I only done that, I think, 3 times. And one or two of those times was with my son. So that's the reason. Other than that, I'm a half a mile or more, and I'm a sweater. I'm not a big guy.
That's one of the big things. I'm looking at merino wool. I'm a sweater too.
Yeah, that's what we both sweat like crazy, even though we're not big dudes. Some people are different, and that's what you got to learn.
We're just built different on our heat regulations. Is completely built like that.
Yeah, and everybody's different, and you got to find out what yours is. Some people don't sweat at all.
My heat regulation's so bad, no crap. If I take like a super hot shower and the bathroom's like a little hot, I'm sweating as soon as I get out of the shower.
Yeah, so
that's how bad it can be.
You just got to figure out your body type and what stuff you need.
But yeah, that's just a big takeaway from 2023. I guess what we're looking at we only got a couple more, like maybe a minute or two, is the downtime in between, which we'll cover that in the next episode a little bit more. But right now, pretty much from January until April, we're just kind of impatiently waiting.
Shed hunt. The deer, I can say, in Wise County, the areas that I checked. Which
As of this day, February 14th.
Today's the 14th. I checked my cameras. I want to say it was a week ago. Only one buck had lost one antler.
And I saw a buck last week in the middle of town of Wise. It was a spike, but it still had his antlers on. So I've never usually seen, at least on my property, when I have found sheds, I usually don't find them until late February, early March.
Yeah, so that's what, so I would be looking at shed hunting and then also use that winter scouting because they're still in their winter pattern. So if you find where they're hanging out.
There's still scarcity of food.
Find their sheds. Their shed is probably in somewhere between food, bed, or somewhere in between, and that's a good winter. If you find a shed, there's a good chance that that's an area that they're going to be using next hunting season. So take note of where you find those sheds.
Exactly.
You can't. I wouldn't say you're going to kill that buck next year on that same spot you found the shed, but it's a good indicator.
Deer usually don't change patterns a lot unless something drastic happens.
Exactly. So look at that, and be getting your stuff dialed in for turkey season, and fishing season's coming up. And next podcast is going to be a lot into that. So
Okay. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like us on Instagram. You can follow me, my personal profile. You can follow Zach's personal profile. I'm going to be listed in the description. And then, of course, the Appalachian Outdoorsman Instagram. All three of us are happy to ask questions, talk, and all that stuff. So, I mean, we're all tied in together on one big old network. And if you're a little bit far away from us and you want to get in touch, we can always get you in touch with somebody who lives near you, because we're kind of dialed into a whole big network anyway. So we'll catch you all on the next episode, and hope you all enjoyed this one, and we'll catch you next time.